Hi, my name is Eric with Dental Access. We are definitely going to have a great meeting today talking about digital dentures, tips and tricks. Esther's has a nice presentation on it. We got Tanya and Kristen and John Batchelor here. Honorable mention to Erica and Steph. Unfortunately, they couldn't make it. I know they are busy, so just I saying hello to you guys. And basically, we'll get started right away. So hopefully, not like last time, it doesn't go too long. All right.
I can talk really fast.
Can you listen? No,
I really can. I think I was an auctioneer in my former life.
You are very articulate, that's for sure. Yes.
Is it how many attendees do we have, Cecilia?
We have 4 so far.
Oh, fantastic. Welcome, everybody.
Well,
okay,
yeah.
I'm just going to minimize this. Okay, let's get going here. Okay, so what we wanted to do today is I wanted to talk about, some of it's going to seem a little bit basic for anyone who's been doing digital dentures for a while, but some of it is things that I've just learned recently, just what does this button do or what does that button do that makes designing a denture just so much easier. And we're just going to go step by step. So the first thing that we have to know, and I know that I sound like a broken record when I talk to my friends and I talk to colleagues, but really when it comes to digital dentures, nothing changes. We don't throw out the window the fact about denture rules or denture design. So there's a lot of people that think, oh, we just need to hire a gamer, or that we're going to lose all the skill that we've taken over the years, all the courses we've taken, and that's absolutely not true. Denture design and function hasn't changed. We're just using a digital capacity in order to make it happen. And I think that Tanya and Kristen and John and everybody would definitely agree on that, that if you don't set teeth over a ridge, it's not going to work. If you don't get a good impression, just because it's done digitally, it's still not going to work. So we don't have to forget our roots. We don't have to ever forget where we came from. When we see a lot of errors come up in our digital study club here in Western Canada, or sometimes I'll see questions that pop up on the 3Shape study groups, most of the errors will root back to the order form, and I think everyone can probably agree with this, that if we don't get this order form right, it's just going to glitch down the road. And the way that I like to explain it in my head is that every button that you're clicking is turning on or off an algorithm in the back. And so sometimes you won't get the error until the very end, until it goes to save. So it's really important that we have all the correct algorithms selected in order to make all the components come together in order to manufacture a denture. There's really 4 areas that we need to pay attention to on the order form. In my opinion, first things first, it's going to be on the top right-hand corner here. And that's where you want to select if it's going to be a digital impression, like it came off of your Trios Intra-Oral scan, if you're actually scanning in an impression, or if you're scanning in a model. So you need to kind of tell 3Shape where it's actually coming from. The second thing you need to do is you need to select a tooth, and you need to, to tell 3Shape that this is an artificial tooth, and you're going to see a whole bank of teeth here. We want to select the last one, and then what kind of tooth manufacturing output we want to have. We're then going to select the base, and then the one that's not talked about here is this bridge button. And I'll just go over that really quickly because we don't really bridge things in the world of dentures, but what the bridge button does is it does 2 things. Is number one is when you're manufacturing in 2 components, either by a print or by a mill, it bridges all the teeth together in a horseshoe shape, so it allows it to be put together all in one piece, and it makes it stronger. There's been studies done that these teeth are insanely stronger compared to an individual setup tooth. But the bridge function turns on the algorithm in 3Shape that allows us to mill in for working and balancing. So if you want to mill in for lateral, for protrusive, and for immediate side shift, you have to have selected the bridge button in your order form. So even if you're planning on doing a monolithic denture, like for example, a try-in denture, or you just want to do a one-piece denture, be it by mill or by print, if you're planning on milling that bite in, you have to have that bridge function selected on this order form. And that goes that. Once we've done our order form, we're going to have the scan server pop up. The scan server is basically the digital equivalent of pouring up your impression and articulating it. So we're just doing it on a digital format. So when we scan, we're basically pouring up our impressions. And then it's going to ask us to trim. So we're going to be taking our little spline, we're going to go around the edge. And that's basically the equivalent of taking that model to the model grinder. And then we have to articulate. So we have to take the two scans and put them together. And that's going to be our articulation button. And you've got two options with 3Shape. You can either align with 1 dot or 3 dots, but you basically just place a dot on one arch and the other arch, and it brings your two arches together. And now, there could almost be an entire webinar just on scanning and scanning questions and scanning problems and control panels with scanning. This is as far as I'm going to get into the world of scanning, because that's for another topic, because I really want to get to Denture Design. But I think that's something that maybe we should talk to Eric about down the road, about definitely doing that. I think it's a good idea, Eric. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a very good idea. Yes.
Okay, let's get into the meat of it, the goodies, the Denture Design. So when we pop up, your screen pops up, you're going to see a toolbar along the top. I know this is kind of basic, but it's kind of important. This tells you your workflow, whereabouts you are along the design of the denture. And what happens is it immediately pops you into this section right here, which is called the prepare section. And this is where you're going to be sculpting, you're going to be doing all your anatomical landmarking. What I want to do is we want to jump, sorry, it immediately goes into anatomical landmarking. What I like to do as soon as the screen pops up is I always like to manually step back one step to the prepare section. So that brings us to this screen, which allows us to sculpt our jaws. And why I want to do that, this gives us an opportunity, should we have an air bubble in our impression, we're able to smooth it out. If we would like to virtually add a post-am or some sort of a recess, because they've got soft tissue, it would allow us to do that. And we can do that by opening up our sculpt toolkit here on the left-hand side. And we can use our wax knife to either subtract, add, or to smooth things out so that our models look absolutely perfect. When you're scanning in an impression, and I think that everybody on the board here will agree that even if it looks like the tiniest little void or the bubble that you would normally just take your scalpel and flick off the model, it's huge on your screen. It looks like you've taken the worst impression in the world. So we end up using this button quite a bit, just to make sure that we've got a clean surface prepared. This would also be the stage where if we were to extract our teeth, this is where we would do it for an immediate denture. So when you pull up the sculpt toolkit, there's a little button here that has a red X on it. And all you have to do is just click on the tooth and it's going to automatically detect the button and it will automatically extract the tooth. So the first real tip I would like to share with you guys today on immediate dentures, just so that you don't feel the pain that I went through, is that you can't extract the tooth where 3Shape automatically suggests the tooth should be extracted. Because what's going to happen is when it auto detects a tooth, it's going to auto detect it at the CEJ, like the right where the tooth and the gingiva come together. But what you need to do is you need to right click and you need to manually extend the spline approximately 3 millimeters on the buccal labial and approximately 2 millimeters on the lingual over top. So basically you're capturing that entire free attached gingiva and then auto extract the tooth at that point by hitting this little green play button. When you hit that play button, the tooth will automatically be extracted. If you don't do this, what happens is when you go to set your immediate denture teeth, the computer is going to automatically bring the gums down, either 1.5 or 2 millimeters, and you're going to end up with these little tiny chiclets. So even though you've artificially set a tooth that looks exactly like their old teeth, they're going to automatically become these little tiny small teeth. So this will save you a world of frustration at this step. Now, when we go into the model analysis, and now this is the button this is the box that automatically appears when your scan server closes. This is basically like the landmarking. So the first thing that's going to ask for is our occlusal plane. And we basically just we can either use input the values from a UTI CAD, or we can just basically use 3 dots. And we're just establishing the plane of occlusion. We need to tell the computer where the front is and where the sides are and the approximate plane of occlusion. So all you do is you click 3 times 1, 2, 3, and that establishes it. This is also going to tell the computer an approximate guide when it drops the teeth into the jaw. So when you select a tooth in the tooth selection field further down the road, if you have this crooked, when 3Shape brings the teeth in, all the teeth are going to be crooked. So this kind of gets the teeth oriented so that it makes it a lot faster. You don't have to move so much stuff down the road. The next button under this model analysis is the characteristic points. I'm going to go fairly quickly on this because it's kind of boring, but basically what we're doing is we're landmarking the casts, or just like we would have normally done with our pencil. And we're just telling 3Shape, here's our neutral zone. This is where we want the teeth to be placed within these boundaries. The third one is going to be the upper jaw boundary and the lower jaw boundary. And this is where I see a lot of mistakes happen, especially with people that have not done denture design before, but they've been more in a crown and bridge application. You really have to know what type of an impression was sort of scanned into the denture. If this was a digital impression off of a trios, which would have been very, very hyperextended because the cheeks would have been pulled out when they did the scan, or is this an overextended alginate impression, or is this like a polyvinyl impression that the denturist or the dentist or the prosthodontist did a lot of work border molding? That's going to determine how much of that roll we would like to capture. So in this particular case, this was a proper polyvinyl border molded impression. And I don't want to make my spline up against the ridge. I want to be able to capture that entire roll. So it's really important. This is the edge of the finished denture, and we want to have this almost along the buccolabial side because we want to be able to capture the entire amount of information. If you don't do this, your denture is going to be hyperextended and it will fall out of the mouth when a person smiles or laughs. And there you go, that's what it looks like. If you make a mistake, don't worry, just right click anywhere on the spline and you can either facet it by redrawing, or you can remove the points back and forth and you can extend or shrink your boundaries. You're going to get into the surveying and blocking out, which is going to be the next screen after that. This is really big, for example, if you're doing RPDs or crown and bridge, and basically the path of insertion, but it's the same thing for a denture. We can do it by a couple of ways on this screen. Number one is you can use these arrows along in this box here, and it will orientate the cast by 5 degrees at a time. Or you can do it the Esterlazy way, which is, oops, as I gesture and talk. And my method that I like to do is I just grab the cast and I orientate it to how I want it to insert. And all I do at that point is I hit this button that says set from view. And it immediately puts the path of insertion at the direction that I'm actually looking at the model.
I'm going to ask the panelists a quick question, John.
Yeah.
And how do you guys, in terms of this part, how do you guys do it normally? Do you guys also do it similarly?
Yeah. I set from view, and also when I'm scanning, it's how I orientate the model in the scanner. So instead of putting it flat, I might put the model on the platform. So I've already, so when I'm scanning my orientation or path of insertion.
Oh, nice. And Tanya and Kristen?
I can't say that I do that what John does. I mean, it makes sense. We try and get the model onto the scan plate fairly parallel, but you know, either way, set from view is a good tip. Obviously, Esther's covering everything, so.
Yeah, I know. I just want to make sure, just so everybody knows, we're all participating here. So if there's any questions or any comments, send them in, and then we'll get the panelists to respond. Sorry, Esther, I'll let you continue.
Not at all. No, and I think that this isn't a very sexy area of digital denture design, the set from view side. But it has a real important point, because if you have a case that has very, very bulbous, bony undercuts, like for example on the canine eminences, or they've got a large undercut around the back tuberosity, this is where you're going to really have to determine, and you really do need to block it out, just like you're going to be blocking out for a partial. You know, for most cases, you can have some slight undercuts. I think you can healthfully go for sure up to 1 millimeter, because soft tissue depresses as the denture is going in and out, and it still will be able to be removed and inserted. But if this is an immediate denture, what I would do is I would do the set from view as close as I could get. And then what I do is I click on block out angle and I change it to 0. So it's going to perfectly block it out at 0 degrees. And we have never, since going digital, had an immediate denture not be able to be fitted by a dentist. Not once since going digital. And that's huge, with having a dentist never have to sit there and grind because you missed one little undercut. So this kind of total peace of mind going digital by being able to use this screen, knowing that you're not going to have anything stuck, which is
nice.
Great.
That is great.
Yeah.
The only other thing that maybe we would do is block that out with some wax. You know, we would just as well, right? You can add it in the undercut area.
Exactly, yeah. And then with taking that block out angle, which does the wax, then you can manipulate it a little bit more on the next screen, which should be right there. There's your next screen. So exactly like what Tanya said, you can add a little bit of wax to any area that's blocked out. I've had this mentioned to me a couple of times just in conversations with older denturists, but they say, well, I wouldn't want to go digital because I really want to be able to manipulate things, for example, when I'm processing. Like I remember back in the day when we used to press pack dentures, and if someone had a large palatal tori, I used to cut out tinfoil and I would make a tinfoil spacer. I know I'm dating myself right now, but we didn't have to. And that was a hard thing when people went into injection processing, because you couldn't have those tinfoil spacers, but we can. For example, if we have a palatal tori, all we have to do, just like Tanya mentioned, is just to take our wax knife and add a little bit of extra wax, and you create a little bit of a relief where there is a bony area. Sometimes we'll get patients that have really curved incisive papillas or mobile tissue in the anterior area, and I'll add a little bit of extra space there. Do you guys do the same thing as well?
Yeah, no, we do. I mean, this application is perfect for the Dr. Abby when you're doing your lower trays and you have to do that anterior retromolar pad. You kind of give it some relief like you would traditionally in the lab with Ivoline. You can do it on here before you print it. So
100%.
that's, yeah, and the retromolar hyo, those little spots, you would relieve it, so it's nice and passive. And then on here, Esther, underneath the wax knife settings, you've got the 0 or the 1 to 7, the disc. That's where you can create your own wax knife.
Yes.
Yeah, so right there, you can kind of save that too, right?
100%. You can figure out your favorite diameter, your favorite amount of space or that's creating. Click it and we hit save, and then you're going to automatically always have that tool back at that exact same size. Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah,
There's always a problem when somebody else uses your computer and they change your favorites.
Like having to adjust the seat in your car every time someone borrows it.
They should have a do not play with a JB setting, but no.
Don't touch it. Don't touch it.
Don't touch it.
Yeah.
So maybe it's the other way around. I'm the one that sit on somebody else's computer and change it to my favorite setting.
Guilty as charged. I'm usually breaking things for Carson all the time. So yeah, but it's kind of it's an interesting, it's a part I think that we really glossed over this section of denture design, and we've sort of found that we've had a lot more success. In other areas, if you've got a knife ridge on the bottom and it happens to be a little bit flabby, we'll add a little bit of extra bead of wax on that area, just because we just have to have a bit of a spacer there. Okay, let's get to the next. Get the ball rolling. I told you I talk fast. Okay, so once we've done all of our landmark, we've decided the path of insertion. At that point, we're going to change teeth, and this is where, or choose teeth, select teeth, and this is where we get a lot of people that will get hung up, or they'll have problems down the road on tooth selection, and we get a lot of people that will say, I don't want to go digital because my XYZ library isn't available digitally yet, and I'm just waiting for that library. And I understand where they're coming from, because I had a very, very romantic attachment to certain tooth molds and certain tooth shapes that became my favorite, just because they worked really well. And what I want to tell you, and you just have to believe me now, trust me later, that when you go digital, I'm not too sure if I can even count on one hand the number of times I've left a library as is. You're constantly morphing and changing shape, because the sky's the limit. So you really just need to have a tooth that's as close to the size as you need, and you end up playing with the mold so much anyways. It doesn't really matter what it is, you're making it unique to that person. Just like you would take the laterals from one card and the centrals from another card, but you don't have to now break up 2 cards. You can do it all together in one. When you're downloading, when you see the libraries, if it's in gray, it just means that it's not available. So the ones that are darkened, they are available. And here's something that will happen. Sometimes you're going to have libraries that are dark and they're available, but they're available only for like 3D printing for try-ins, but they're not available for milling because they've been patent protected. So it just means that the manufacturer has not sold the right to that tooth. So what will happen is when you ask for a CAM5 milling output in order for that denture to go to mill, you're going to get an error at the very, very end of all of your hard work, and the error is going to say noise output. And basically it means that it's been damaged, like the surface has been noised, so that you don't actually have the rights to manufacture that tooth. So you really want to make sure that you're using a tooth that you do have a license in order to use. And this doesn't restrict us, and because there's so many teeth out there that we can use. Vertex has teeth for free. Fabulous Smiles has teeth for free. Candular has teeth for free. You can buy the license to use the Ivoclar teeth for about $900 Canadian, and you've got unlimited for life use on that license. So you do have a lot of options, and we'll kind of go back and forth. What are your guys' panelists? What do you guys like using for teeth? Do you have any favorites?
We mostly use the Finnair's, the Vivadent, and we're starting to use more of the Fabulous Smiles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah,
And you, John?
I'm the same. But you're right too. Esther, that morphing tool, because some molds you might not like the lateral, you like the canines, you like the centrals, but the laterals might be just a wee bit narrow. But yeah, that morphing tool is just
Awesome.
amazing. And we'll talk about that. Yeah.
It's awesome. Yeah, we'll get into that a little bit more too, but it's really good. They the Fabulous Smiles, if anyone hasn't tried it, I love the Fabulous Smiles. It has a book that you can get. It was made from a couple in Sweden, and the book is almost like a coffee table book, and people can flip through and they can pick a real life person, and so it kind of takes the anxiety of choosing a denture. If someone comes to me and they say they want to make sure the denture doesn't look like a denture, they want it to look real life, we will go into the Fabulous Smiles. But now this is where it's going to kind of turn into more of a personal preference. I find because the Fabulous Smiles are based off of a natural tooth anatomy, they're very, very cusped. They're very aggressive. So when it comes time, I really have to make sure that I mill the bite in. Otherwise, I really end up locking the bite together, and there's a lot of dislodgement when a person's chewing. So I will end up, if I use the Fabulous Smiles, I'll just end up milling the bite in just a little bit more than if I was to use a 20-degree tooth from another company. Yeah.
I just did an arch with the Fabulous Smiles that Esther milled for me, and we're just processing it now, and hopefully it turns out great.
They're beautiful, beautiful teeth. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to select whatever tooth you want from the drop-down menu. And then over here, which took me about 6 months to learn, I really should probably open my eyes and pay attention. There's two little buttons right here. And if you press this button, it will minimize all the teeth. And if you push this button here, it will push them over to the side. So if halfway through your design, you're just like, oh my goodness, this is a terrible tooth, I should have picked something different. All you have to do is just go back and find your little arrows, and you can bring back your tooth mold, reselect a different mold, hit apply, and it throws in a whole new set of teeth, and you can start fresh again. There you go. Okay, so once you've selected your teeth, you're going to be on a screen called the initial setup screen, or the Smile Composer screen. And what we want to do is we want to pay attention to 5 little buttons. And these 5 buttons will change your life if you know what they mean. And they're under the design tools, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And what you really need to kind of understand is, or at least how we do it in our world, Esterland, is we work from left to right. Left is big movements, and then it goes into smaller movements. So the very, very first button is the occlusal plane adjustment. And this is where if you didn't get your 3 dots correct on your initial landmarking screen, you can move the entire arch back and forth, but all teeth as a whole unit. So we do our massive adjustments right off the beginning. Do you guys do the same thing as well, panelists? Do you guys work from left to right?
Yeah.
And some nods. Okay, so the second button that we get to is the arch setup button. I'm going to be very, very honest with you. This button scared the living daylights out of me, and I just didn't understand how it actually worked until maybe about 6 months ago, where I just finally had some time and I sat down and I really played with things. But what it is that if you click on it, it will take an entire arch and it will move the entire arch out or in. So it moves all the teeth together kind of in a unit. And that's really cool. And you can also click, it's kind of hidden by my button here. There's one that says symmetric. So if you move one arch out, you'll move the other arch out at the same time. Where I'm in love with the arch setup button is if a person has a very, very tapered arch, like a very, very V'd arch, and we want to create it almost like a buck tooth, kind of a stack setup. All we do is we use this button, click on it, and bring the eye teeth back and in, and it kind of stacks all the teeth automatically for us. You guys? Yeah, I don't know if there's any other tips on this one. There are some hotkeys here that you can use, and those are just by using your keyboard. That kind of helps do it a little bit faster. Anything else? Yeah. The third button is the manual arrangement button. I sort of set up my digital teeth exactly how I would have set up my analog teeth. This doesn't change. So we sort of follow a BPS format where at first I get my upper anteriors exactly where I want them to be. Then I set my lower posteriors. Then I go back. So I'm doing it digitally exactly like how I would have planned it on an analog. And I really want to make sure that those teeth are over the ridge. And when you're under the manual arrangement, all you have to do is just click on your number 6 molar or your number 7 molar, and you can bring the entire arch in and out all together in sequence. And that's really fast, and it's very, very handy, especially if you're going to be doing like a Dr. Abe setup where you want to have it more into the buckle into the neutral zone. Just now here's something I only learned not too long ago. On the crest of the ridge, you're going to see a green line, and that green line turns to red. And that's where we used to manually take and measure where that 22.5-degree angle is, where we don't want to set a tooth past that angle, because if we bite down, the denture will slide forward. The computer automatically figures that out for us. So we just need to make sure that we don't put any teeth past where the green and the red line is.
Does that start from the settings though, Esther? Do you have to implement that with your setup off the mandible, right?
Yes, you do. Thank you, Tanya. Yeah, that's in the control panel. Thank you. Yeah.
And the other thing, Esther, the other good thing is you can't show it on your slide, but you can, when you set your teeth over the ridge, like you have on the right-hand side, you can make those teeth transparent with the button, one of those buttons on the right-hand side. So you can make the teeth almost disappear and bring it back, so you can actually see where the teeth are over the ridge.
You know what, JB, absolutely, you nailed it. And I think that's the beautiful part about digital, is we're actually setting up teeth without there being a model even in the way. So we can flip this thing around, and we can look from all different sides. And to be able to get teeth in the right zone is just so much easier. There's no wax in the way. We can see everything. Yeah. And what JB is referring to is right here.
In the top right, we use that ghosting ability with the teeth, the models, and the gingival face all the time.
We do too, yeah. That's a thank you guys for mentioning that. That's awesome.
Nice.
Okay, the fourth. This is the one I think all of us here will agree we spend the most amount of time with. That's the individual setup. And this is basically the equivalent of taking your wax knife and moving each tooth individually, rotating them, making them longer. But you also have the ability to make the teeth wider, to make the teeth shorter, to make all different directions. Now, there's a couple of features here I would like you guys to sort of notice. Every once in a while, somebody will say, I'm setting up my teeth, but I don't have the green and the yellow dots. So if you can kind of see closely here, on either side of my lateral, I've got 2 green dots, which will take my tooth and bring them wider and more narrow. Or I've got 2 green yellow dots, which will actually make the tooth more angled, like a V. If you selected on your order form that you're using a carded tooth, the computer will not give you the option in order to morph that tooth, because when you've given the final manufacturing output, the sockets cannot be distorted in any way, shape, or form from the shape of the carded tooth. So you're going to lose the ability to be able to morph or change teeth if you selected that you're using a carded tooth in your order form setup.
Can I just jump in too, Esther, that in order to use those buttons, you need to click on, in the settings, the morphing button.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
We discussed that at the control panel at the
the control panel.
Yes.
Yeah.
Recommended.
So much belongs to your setup, and I think this is where having a really good supplier team and support team and making sure that your software is correctly set up for dentures is just so key to making it work correctly. Yeah. Another tool that we use quite often is that we can, when we're under the individual setup, this fourth button, if you right click on either your second molar or your second premolar, it will give the option of dropping those teeth either on one side or on both sides. And we'll do this, for example, if someone is a class 3 or class 2, or they've just got a really curved ridge and we just don't have enough space. It's at this, we don't do the dropping of the tooth in the setup form, we do the dropping of the teeth here. So you don't have to preemptively decide, okay, I don't know, this arch is really small. Do I need to have 12 teeth in this arch, or do I want to have 14 teeth in this arch? Don't worry about it. We still select from your second molar to your second molar in your order form, and you can decide at this stage whether or not you would like to keep all the teeth, all 28 teeth in there, or if you would like to drop something.
And then if you remove it and you decide to put it back on, you have to go back into where that little blue regret button is, that black pointed arrow, to reapply it.
The undo lifesaver button.
Yeah.
Very great button.
Yeah.
Love it.
Probably the best invention 3Shape ever created, the undo button.
Does controls on the keyboard, does Control Z work here as well? Just as an FYI for everybody, or?
Oh, I didn't know that. Look at that.
It couldn't. Yeah, it could. I haven't tried it, but yes, I'll give it a go. And if the whole thing disappears, Eric, I'll send it up. You can redesign for me.
In case you can't click, just try with the keyboard. Very curious. It is a question, so we'll figure it out in the end. So yes.
Oh, is that a question? I'm sorry.
I'm pretty sure the Control Z works, but I'm very curious to just the undo button. Control Z should work for the undo. So.
Oh, okay. I see the question. Oh, there we go. Oh, here we go. We have a question. We have some issues with scanning thin areas like the retromolar hide fossa area in the SEMCD precision impressions. Yes, Paul. Welcome to my little world. This sometimes when and I think we do need to have a webinar just on scanning, especially with scanning and where you're going to put your spline or your outline can kind of make it or break it. So I think Eric, we definitely need to organize just the scanning only, troubleshooting on scanning, especially for BPS and SEMCD dentures. 110%.
Sometimes the lingual to the rich molar pad can be a wee bit of an issue too, occasionally. I don't know if you guys have found that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sometimes we'll take Play-Doh or plasticine and we'll actually kind of have to build the area up just a little bit, and then we just kind of take it back down with the morphing afterwards. There's a few little tricks.
One of the tips that you taught me, or Esther, was if you've got the nathometer and you've got the impressions and you're scanning it like as a triple tray, is to block out that void where the BTC would be along the upper, like that annulus area. To fill in that void, it almost scans a bit better because the light's not coming through, right?
That's actually, yeah, that's a Peter Anastasia tip. 100% correct. So Paul, if you're still listening, just keep them all together in one unit and use like some putty and make it all solid. Yeah. Okay. Any other?
No, I think, yeah, well, questions will come along. Let's keep on going.
Okay, so the eating shelf for a class 2 denture. So this is kind of a big one because we all know that our patients aren't lovely class 1s every single day. We get a lot of class 2s and a lot of class 3s. And I know that 3Shape is going to be improving this down the road for class 2 and class 3, but right now we do have to trick the system just a little tiny bit. So what I like to do, if it's a class 2, is I'll make my premolar quite a bit more narrow. I also make my eye tooth a little bit more narrow, and I just kind of bring to distal. I bring all the teeth back to distal, and so that brings the whole lower arch back. And I do that just by right-clicking on each tooth, and it will bring it back manually one by one. That's the fastest. And then I take the morphing tool, and what I do is on the underside of the back teeth is I just kind of pull the lingual down, and it creates an eating shelf right under the tooth itself, which is awesome because the person's now chewing up against the white part of the tooth, and it actually just makes the whole denture that much extra stronger because the bridge is now going to be a lot thicker. Do you guys do the same thing as well for your class 2 setups and class 3s?
Yeah, that morphing tools, we use it a lot.
Lose it, yeah. Yeah, you play around with it, and you can hold your shift key and you can hold your control key, and you can click on these buttons, and just by moving your mouse will move the whole section in and out, up and down. It's actually a lot of fun. And this is a great tool if you're doing an immediate denture and a person has, for example, a slightly twisted central with a little chip out of it. You can use this tool and you can perfectly copy exactly what they had from their natural teeth if they wish to have that.
Nice.
Okay, so before I leave the Smile Composer, I use these toggle buttons that JB and Tanya and Kristen were talking about. And what I do is I make everything disappear, including the teeth, and then I bring the tooth back just one click. And what we do is we look at these green margins around all the teeth. And what we want to do is we want to make sure that the teeth are close together, but we want to make sure that those green lines don't cross overlap. Here's what will happen is that if they're overlapped, you're not going to get an error that you recognize. Anyways, you probably get other errors, but you're not going to get one that's specifically saying your green margin lines are overcrossed. But what will happen is when you go to output the file and you send it to your printer or your mill, you're going to have a fin, almost like a fish fin that's going to come out between a couple of teeth of gingiva, or you will not even be able to create gingiva. The computer will not be able to figure out where to actually wax up for the denture. So if you find that you ever get this kind of fin-like structure coming out between the teeth, or you're having errors and it's not generating a gingiva placement for the pink part, it's probably due to an error that you're getting on the teeth crossing. Yeah.
Nice.
You're going to get this pop-up. It's going to say gingiva line violation. Ignore it. You're going to get it every single time. Just ignore it.
Do you guys all? Does everybody here ignore it?
It's almost click. Don't see it.
Yeah, click. Don't see it.
You too, Tanya?
You will never not get this error. It will happen every single time.
Yeah.
So just ignore it. Another thing I should probably go back to is that you have a way of, on your toggles here, I'm asking 3Shape if the teeth are set correctly, and you'll have check marks or X's above the teeth, and you'll have little errors. I just ignore those. I don't pay attention to those anymore because I like to create little spaces in between my teeth so that when I mill, we have really nice interproximal definition. So I always have errors on my teeth, and I just ignore it. It goes through. Spaces are okay. The computer system is completely fine with that. What it's not fine with is overlapping. That's where you're going to get the errors. Okay. You're going to now get to the next screen under this initial setup, and that's called the maxillary base or the mandibular base. And basically, you're just asking the computer, or you're telling the computer how thick you would like to have the denture. So I'm going to do a poll here. I'll tell you, in our office, we like to do dentures at 2 millimeters, and if it's for an immediate denture, we do it at 1.5, just because we are going to be adding hard relines to it, which builds it up. And if it's someone that's really prone to breaking, we'll go at 2.5 millimeters. What do you guys do?
We do
Yeah,
too.
Yeah.
Yes.
2.5 for me.
2.5. Oh, they make them burly down in New Zealand.
Yeah. We're rugged southern men.
All the rugby players, yeah. I am going to tell you right now from personal experience, you can feel my pain. If you're planning on printing a 3D printed denture, I mean, of course, I can't attest to all brands, but I've tested the majority of them out there. 1.5 millimeters is not thick enough, and they will break that print just by chewing on it. It needs to be a minimum of 2 millimeters thick. The printed dentures they're just too brittle. So.
Mm-hmm. Good to know.
Now, you're going to get this warning. It's a warning that you need to just ignore once again, but I'm going to tell you why you get this warning. 3Shape has absolutely no clue what printer you own. They have absolutely no clue what mill you own. It doesn't matter, because this file could be sent to Tanya. Tanya can send a file to me. It doesn't matter. All it's doing is it's just outputting a file that can be printed, or it's outputting a file that can be milled. So what this warning is it's saying, based on the design, we have no clue what mill you have, but if you have a 3-axis mill or a 5-axis mill, there may be certain areas that it just can't reach all the undercuts because that mill just can't angle at enough the depth. So although it may look like you can reach the undercuts on your design, just be warned that the mill that you're manufacturing on may not be able to get inside there. And 3Shape saying, it's not our responsibility, that it could just be your mill, and you may need to recalibrate your settings based on the mill that you're using. Anyone have any questions or suggestions on that? No. Okay, now we're going on to our next button, which is called Anatomy Design, and a lot of really fun things happen under this screen. First one is going to be the connectors. If you have version 2019 onwards, it's going to give you the option to automatically reduce the linguofacial and center scale of your connectors. Okay, so that's this little box right here. And all we do in our office is we just reduce it to as low as it will go, which is 70, 70, 60. And it's still burly enough and thick enough that it keeps everything supported. 3Shape will not let us go lower, I think, unless you change your settings, lower than 70, 70, 60. So that's what we do. But if this was a case where I knew that the person was from New Zealand and they chewed extra hard and they were going to break their dentures, I perhaps may want to take the lingual scale and make it a little bit thicker in order to keep the denture thicker along the back sides, just so it's a little bit stronger. Do you have any suggestions on that?
Oh, that's a good explanation.
Yeah. In version 2018 that we had, if sort of people that haven't upgraded yet, you would have to take, you would have a little reduction tool, and you'd have to go through and you'd have to reduce each one by using the minus button back and forth, just so that you would be able to have your gingiva come down nice and neat. And it was kind of a bit of a pain, and but it worked. That one works as well. You could always do it that way as well.
What we've been struggling with, Esther, is on the design. What we're doing is we're printing a monoblock try-in for patients, and then we're splitting the file, as you know, we're sending the arch to you for milling. What we're doing is we're trying to get that printed arch to fit perfectly, get the milled arch to fit perfectly within the printed monoblock.
Right.
So, but there's discrepancy there. So what we've been trying to do is increase the connector on the printed version, and then reducing it off the milled arch so that it sits better for flasking. So we've been trying to struggle with the connectors a little bit.
Yeah. So what happens in that particular case is when you're printing a monoblock, you'll notice that the definition is absolutely perfect, like a fingerprint. It's absolutely perfect. It is, but when you're doing it, actually the next screen, I think I'm going to show you an example of, I think, what's going on here. Nope, 2 more screens. Hold that thought. Okay, we're going to get back to that one. On the next one is the Sculpt Anatomy button. this is where you're going to have success or failure on your denture. A lot's going to happen here. What you need to do is, if you brought your teeth in and you didn't change a thing, you didn't move the posteriors in and out, you didn't twist any teeth, you didn't change anything, and you knew that for 100% certainty that your setup is perfectly orientated because you use the Bellis 3D and everything's all kind of connected, you could go ahead and just continue on. But if you've moved your teeth, you risk, or you moved any tooth, you risk that the teeth are kind of shifted. And what's basically happened is that you will virtually open up your bite, or you virtually open up the pin. But you've got no way of knowing it because you actually don't see a pin here. So it's always important. Every single case, when I come to the screen, I always go and I bring in the joystick button and I hit play, and I make sure that all my contacts are cut to 0 and I have not virtually opened up my pin at all. And then what we do after that is we go over to this side right here and we click on the articulator button while we're in this screen, and it's going to bring in our virtual articulator. And we do a couple of things here. First of all, I always bring the plane right back so that my pin on my articulator is right where it's supposed to be for average value if I haven't used a Bellis facial mount. And I can open and close my bite should I wish, but what we do is we click on this top right button and it brings in our virtual articulator so we can actually mill in our bite. Now, I just happen to have the Ivoclar articulator storage. There's a little drop down button here. You can use the Cavo articulator, the SAM articulator, it doesn't matter, whatever articulator you want. It doesn't really matter, it all does the same thing, so you don't have to be married to one particular brand. And what we do is we hit the play button and it virtually starts to mill in the bite. And our magic number in our office is that we hit play and then you hit the word adapt designs and we mill it in 3 times on the top, 3 times on the bottom. And if you mill it in more than 3 times on the top, you're going to start to lose some of the anatomy on your anterior teeth. How do you guys, panelists, do you guys, similar workflow for you?
Yeah, and you got to be careful that you don't, what you're saying is you don't over mill your upper anterior teeth.
Yeah,
100%.
It's really fascinating because you can see the occlusal surface being softened on the computer screen.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And I think if you do have to have a case, like for example, let's just say you're using a more cusped tooth, for example, like let's just say it's a Fabulous Smiles library, and you just want to have it like where you really, this person needs to have a lot of freedom. I would mill the upper end 3 times, but I would mill the lower end maybe 4 times or 5 times. A slightly worn lower anterior looks really natural. It looks very, very good, opposed to a half worn out central or lateral or eye tooth. Here's a little bit of a trick though when it comes to this virtual articulation, where sometimes it can go sideways. When you're in your smile design, you're able to bring the articulator in and you're able to do this exact same thing. And you can hit play, and then you can hit the word adapt designs, but it won't actually save any of your changes. It will only save and kind of cut the tooth and actually start to morph for your working balancing when you're under the anatomy design and sculpt anatomy button. So although you're able to do that function under the smile design when you're setting up your teeth, it's not going to actually save anything. You have to be able to do it under this section right here. So that's caught a few people. Yeah. Okay. The next button is the Sculpt Denture Design button. I'm not going to talk too much about this one because 2020 is so revolutionary for denture gums and design with the new gingivator that's coming out. Do you guys want, Tanya or John, do you guys want to talk a little bit about what's coming up?
Well, I think it does make it easier. When's the release date in Canada? So it was going to be May, but I think it's been put back.
Yes, it was put back. I don't have an official date. We don't actually have an official date. I know it's been pushed back, but great feedback from the community. Esther has provided also a lot of feedback to 3Shape about this. So the more feedback they get, less bugs with the new version will come, hopefully.
What we could do is when we know when the release date is, just prior to release date, we can do a little webinar on what's new in 2020.
Yes. I think last I heard was June, July. Am I wrong, Esther? Or?
You know what? I just got back to work this week, so I'm a little out of the loop. I apologize.
Yeah.
I took a COVID holiday.
I think we all did.
Yeah.
In more ways than one. If anyone knows the story. So yeah. So
because each reseller will have or may have a slightly different release date. And the reason reason being that 3Shape releases it, and the resellers get it, and they want to have time to get their head around what's happening with the updates. So yeah, let's find out, and then we can do a little webinar on what's new in 2020.
I think, you know,
yeah.
When I first started into digital dentures a few years ago, and actually I have to say it was primarily because of JB. I was in Australia for some SEMCD meetings, and I listened to him lecture, and my jaw hit the ground. I'm like, this is what I've been waiting for. He said all the right words. But anyways, and that's what's kind of going on 3 years actually now. But when we would get these updates from 3Shape, it would be like 2 sentences were denture, and it was pages of crown and bridge and splint and implants and all these other things. Now when we're seeing the releases from 3Shape, it's all these denture updates which are coming first, and then there's a little bit for all these other areas. So you know, 3Shape has just really taken the bull by the horns, and they're just, it's, the amount of changes for dentures is awesome. It's great for the industry. It's great for all us denture people out there that are doing dentures. But things like this gingivator, what it's doing is you're able to create free touch gingiva rolls, canine eminences, and it gives you little slide bars, and you can make them more aggressive, less aggressive. So it anatomically waxes the denture up for you just by using toggles, and then you still have the option of your wax knife button to build up or to reduce. So we're talking hand carved anatomical wax ups done in just a few clicks.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, it's
create those settings too. You can create your own carve or your own morphing of the gingiva, and you can save that if you want to. You have your sort of trade carve. You can apply that to all your dentures. This is definitely something that we struggled with. Is trying to get the feel of using the buttons to create eminence and contour it and pull the papillas down. It, you know, it takes some time for sure. So the gingivator is going to be much easier for
It's good. So yeah.
Nice.
Well needed. And you know, and you have to sort of be a little bit careful too. Like you know, like I had one case where I did spend a little bit of extra time, and what I did is I had these crazy rolls, and then when I went to milling, the undercuts were too great, and we risked breaking a burr. You know, you still have to kind of think what your manufacturing output's going to be, because it is a reductive technology unless you're 3D printing. So yeah, but good things to come on this next release. It's going to be awesome. Okay, this is going back to Tanya's question about getting things to fit together. So the coupling mechanism, I didn't really actually even understand how it worked until kind of later in the game. But what we do is when we get to this coupling mechanism is we kind of we make everything solid, and we sort of half gray out the actual denture itself. And you can see these purple lines, and this is the socket that's being created for the teeth to fit into the base. And then what you do is this little line here is like a joystick button, and you play with it back and forth, and it's playing with the path of insertion of the teeth into the gingiva. So you can create real natural looking anatomy in the front, and you can kind of make it bigger in the back. So, and then you can also open up your angles a little bit more, and that's going to allow for an easier drop in. Does that kind of help a little bit or answer?
So we're not, well, I don't know, how do you want to explain this one? So we take a monoblock try-in and we mill the arch of teeth. We flasp the monoblock, we pull that out, we drop in the mill of the teeth, and we inject for base.
You know what might be easier is to mill the teeth, print the base, but with no teeth, put them together and just loop them around with just a little tiny bead of wax, then invest that, and then pop off the pink and then inject it that way.
Yeah, that's how most I think most people are mixing the analog and the digital world. Yeah, they're like milling the teeth. They're now printing the base and putting them, and then just, as you say, just loose it. Yeah.
We need us to get clear pucks.
Yeah, I know. I think they're coming. I've heard that, but but if you just print the base only. Don't print a monoblock with teeth. Base only. They'll snap together pretty good, and just the tiniest little bead of wax, and then try that. Okay. I know a couple other dentures that are doing it that way, and they seem to have fairly good success. And that's how we do it in our office when cases are too big, when we have really, really big arches that don't fit, is that we mill one but print the other and then snap them together. Yeah, it might help. Now, one of the buttons that you'll need to play around with on this setting here is this coupling depth button. You kind of got to be careful about this one, but basically what this is you're telling the computer, you know how on a denture tooth we have a neck on a tooth, and that neck gets buried into the acrylic, and that's sort of what helps create the mechanical / chemical retention that holds it together. We're saying to the computer that we require a 2mm socket for that neck of the tooth to come in. Well, we all know on an immediate denture, we don't have the luxury of 2mm sockets. Like, that just doesn't happen, and we're going to create errors. So if you have an immediate denture and you're getting all these errors on the immediate denture because you had to make it so thin, this is where you want to play around, and I quite often will put the coupling depth just to 1mm only, and I will reduce that button there. Okay, and oops, sorry, just reduce it by this section right there, and then going to the next screen. So we finished the coupling mechanism. Now we're in the pre-manufacturing. I apologize for this little red circle here, but just 1 second here before I move on. We have, okay, so this little red circle here, there's a little eyeball, and just what we want to do is you click on the eyeball, and it's going to have a preview. So instead of going all the way to the end, because it takes too long if you have to make an error and go back, we click on the eyeball, and then using the slider buttons, we look at the denture base and we look at the denture teeth, and we want to make sure that the green lines are perfect all the way around and that there's no errors, and then you don't have anything that goes into manufacturing. If you don't do this, the computer will still generate a file output for manufacturing, but this is what will happen. Your manufacturing output is you're going to have errors in the base, or the base won't properly mill out the sockets, and you'll have errors on the teeth. So you need to make sure that green line goes perfectly all the way around, or you've got to change your settings. And then we're finished, just like that.
Wow, that was good.
Does anybody any questions at all on designing dentures, designing?
I guess from the panelists, we could maybe discuss, well, hopefully we'll generate some questions. I don't have access to all the questions.
We don't have any more questions, actually. So.
Okay, that's fine.
I've got a couple more tips. I think it's only just a few more slides. If we can go really quickly, and this might just sort of help, but basically if it's a single arch denture, all you're just going to do is you're going to right click, bring the tooth down to antagonist, use your blue button, pull it down a little tiny bit more, and then when you get to that screen, we cut to the opposing arch to 0 and then mill in or bite. And then you're going to have a perfectly morphed upper tooth to the natural worn anatomy of the lower opposing arch. Do you guys do the same thing, John? And yeah. That's how you handle your single arches. Yeah. And that's right under the sculpt anatomy button.
We have one question coming in, actually.
Yeah.
That's good.
I'll just read it out. It's from Ahmed Sahir. Adding space between the teeth is a great trick. Can you explain more how you do it without altering occlusion?
Very good. All we do is we just take the teeth and we click on it, and I take the little blue button and I just move the teeth just so there's a little space in between each one. And then you always are going to mill your cut to occlusion and mill the bite in, and your occlusion will be perfect. JB, do you do the same thing?
Yeah, and the good thing is just having a little space between the teeth gives when the dentures in the mouth, it looks like it gives them definition, interproximal definition, and it makes it look good.
There won't actually be a space between the teeth. It's going to look like there's a space between the teeth on your design, but there will not be a space in between the teeth on the manufacturing. If you're milling, not if you're printing, but if you're milling, yeah. And we kind of like to do about 0.18 to 0.2 of a millimeter. So we're just talking a sliver, just tiny, tiny, tiny. Yeah. Okay. So we mill the bite in on the single. There's the fabulous smiles, and you can see how I brought the tooth back in order to create an eating shelf. So that worked really good.
So then did you just morph that incisal in the behind with the articulator? Did it just during did it just mill it through? Oh,
got to antagonist and then just brought my articulator and it milled it all out for me. Yeah, and this was first try in the mouth, no adjustments. So super. Yeah, and this here, we copied a wedding picture, and she found her wedding smile in this book, and she kind of had a crossed over front tooth. So, yeah. Okay, dentures off of an intra-oral scan. Very, very easy. There's lots of people I'm seeing now that they have to invest in just one item. It's going to either be a Trios or it's going to be a desktop scanner. We get a lot of questions about, can I still do it if I don't have like an E3 or an E4? And you absolutely can. You're just going to select that it's a digital impression. You're going to scan your dentures in. And then under this button here, which happens at the very beginning, you just want to click off that it's an impression. And you're just going to tell the computer that this is actually an impression off of an intraoral scan. And just exactly everything else is the same that we talked about. Nothing else changes. You just got that one extra step right at the very beginning.
But you have to create models first before you go to design.
Not anymore. You used to, but not with 2019, the last 2019 update. You don't have to anymore. Just when you're creating your order form, you just select that it's a digital impression and no more models have to be generated.
We just had this conversation with Eric a couple days ago about this, with all our trio scans coming in, and trying to, you know, ideally we want to bring in the scans, a full upper against natural teeth with the trios, and then go straight to setup. But I think we have to make a model and then carry on.
Well, we were stuck when there was a bug with the 2020, so therefore, and that one, and basically the scan, one of them had a base, the other one didn't, and even though it wasn't requested to create a model, that's when I said, you know what, let me fix the existing scan, and that's what I just did a workflow for, and then I grabbed that and then put it into a new workflow. So this is more of my troubleshooting, make it work. Normally it is supposed to work, but in that case it didn't work. Because you are supposed to be able to, but I guess Esther could probably chime in on this.
Yeah, I got to, we at the very beginning, I remember when we were in 2018, we had to have models created before, but we haven't had to for quite a while yet, but it might be something in the settings. We'll have to take a look at that. But just as long as we select in the order form that it was a digital impression, like, you know how there was 3 boxes at the very, very beginning, if we select that it's a digital impression, and then when you go on, you bring in the design, you go back that one button at the beginning, and there's going to be a refine scan button. That's where this is, and then you have to click one more time. That's impression. Just the two. Those are the only 2 things you have to change, and it works quite well. Were you scanning like actual, like, were you scanning like an Elgin impression, or were you scanning something similar to what I have on the screen here? Similar to what you have on the screen.
A full upper denture, like trio scan of the upper, and then the lower arch natural, and then the bite trio.
And get the bite together in the mouth. Oh yeah, that should totally work, no problem. 100% work, no problem. Yeah.
Yes. It should definitely work. We don't go for it.
No.
Oh, there's another question. Oh, there's another question.
We set an order for a printed try and it was fine. Do you make any changes to the design of the copied order when you're milling final denture? So there's a couple of changes here, Ahmed, that we can do. The new update, the last update that we received from 3Shape now creates both 2 files. It creates both a printed file as well as a milled file. So you don't have to actually make changes, but that's printed and milled for monoblock or printed and milled for 2 separate. So if you were printing, let's just say the teeth and the base separately, you will already have milled files in there and you don't have to make any changes at all. You're good to go. If you had printed a monoblock for a try-in and now that patient says, okay, I love everything, and you now want to send it to a mill, you are going to have to append the order form to a 2-piece order, and then you're going to have to click next, next, next. Kind of the going understood rule in 3Shape is don't ever let it auto redesign. Always click it through next yourself. Sometimes it will glitch when you do an auto redesign. Don't ask me. I just listen to what other people say on the groups, and that's what we do. Yeah.
That's actually a pretty good tip, actually. Yeah, I mean, I do say that myself, but
yeah,
it doesn't hurt to try if you want, but make a copy just in case.
always make a copy. It's like 1 click, just make a copy. Yeah.
That's another tip, right, John? Would you agree? If you ever want to try something different, make a copy of your existing case you've already been working on.
Yeah. It's always good to have a copy. You can always go back.
Yes.
Oh, I guess, sorry, Ahmed, I didn't read your question right. Do you make any changes in the design of the copied order when you're milling the final denture? No, I don't, because I really want to make sure that unless the patient wanted to change. Like if the patient said, I love everything, but I just want this one lateral a little more twisted, then I will do that. But no, I want to keep, if that bite was on, if the looks were good, I don't want to change anything. I mean, it was approved. We're going to mill. We don't change anything at all. So, okay.
And finally, sorry, another question from Paul.
Yes. Okay.
On a different note, do all you guys design your custom trays of impression scans or model scans?
Oh, impression for me, but I just really have an aversion to the wet bench, and I don't want to ever pour up a model again as long as I live. So how about you guys, the panelists?
Yeah, Yeah, I try and do it from an impression, but sometimes on a lower, I will pour a model, and if I really want a particular tray, and go from the model scan, but predominantly impression scanning.
If there's crazy undercuts, like for example, or if it's an impression like of teeth, sometimes you just have to pour it up. But that would be the only thing. Yeah.
Great. And another question.
Yeah, this is good.
Questions are coming in. This is good.
Love it.
Yeah, from Audrey. Adapt design button. I'm confused about. You run the articulator, you see your marks. So adapt design means that we're the spot that, sorry. So adapt design means that where the spot in takes place.
Okay, so when we're running the articulator, I'm pretty sure this is where she's asking, is this screen here. There is there's a little CD-ROM wheel. I don't know if you guys can see my mouse here. It's right here. If you click on that wheel, it will make your marks different colors, okay? So the blue will be for laterals, the black is for protrusive, and the red is for immediate side shift. And that's where the teeth are actually, so if you were to put articulating paper and you're to move the articulator, that's where it's hitting. That's the interferences. So then going back to here, it says cut contacts by 0.1 of a millimeter. So if you decide that you want to adapt your designs, it's going to take every one of these contact points and it's going to cut it off by 0.1 of a millimeter, or I could change this to 0.01 or 0.05 or whatever number I want, and it will actually cut and remove any one of these contact points that you have along there. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's honestly, I can say you cannot get occlusion as smooth analog as you can digital. It's just absolutely impossible.
100%.
You will never get, it's just for the amount of time, it's just for the articulation alone and how smooth. It's like you insert these dentures and it's like butter. And it's hard to explain, but you still get goosebumps. It's crazy. Yeah.
Perfect. And then another question from Ahmed. Do you set lower teeth centered on the green line crest of the ridge or the red one that joins the canine and retromolar path?
Do I set the lower teeth on the ridge or do I set, can you read the second part again?
On the
Okay,
retromolar
let
path.
me just send you the question because I might not be pronouncing it correctly.
Okay, hold on.
I think it's on the landmarks, the lines that are created from the landmarks. Like on the crest center of the ridge, or where you mark at the retromolar pad and then the buccolingual one, and it creates those lines.
Gotcha. Okay. So, I mean, there's kind of a couple of answers to this. And the answer is where do you want to set your teeth? There's lots of different schools of thought. There's, when you went to school, some people were very much, and when I went to school, I was very much on crest of ridge. My further training and further as I study more and more about teeth, I'm more now looking for a neutral zone. So my teeth, I don't actually follow that as much anymore. So, are you wanting to set up like Massad's theory, or you want to set it up like Turbofil's theory? Are you trying to set it up like the old Dentsply method where we were right on ridges? It kind of depends on what you want. Digital is only going to be, it's not going to make a denture perfect. It's still up to you to put it where you have studied and where you understand the design to go. But in my particular case, and I think JB and Tanya are going to probably say something similar they can add in here. I don't necessarily follow the crest of the ridge because as ridges resorb, they shrink in different directions. So I'm looking more for a neutral zone, and I just use the crest of the ridge as a guide.
And if I can just jump in there too, Esther, that the measurement tool I use a lot, or the cross-section tool. So then I can measure where the start of the ridges, and measure how wide the ridge is, and then say 50% of that. So you're right, it may not be right over the crest of the ridge, it might be just a wee bit buckly to the so yeah, the neutral zone, setting to the neutral zone, I think is especially if you follow Dr. Abe's techniques and things like that, setting in that neutral zone is so important.
So important. And it's just because 3Shape has a denture module, this is not a pre-designed denture system. It's not that you input a scan and boom, you output yourself a denture. You still have to have all of your understanding of dentures in the analog world, and you have to tell 3Shape what it is that you want to do.
And I think you touched on it too, Esther. You can, whatever philosophy you prescribe to, you can set your teeth up in that philosophy. So you're not locked into any one system.
No, it's beautiful. There's always more than one way to skin a cat.
Love it. All right, well, guys, I'm gonna be calling the time now. I mean, this is great. We just went right over the hour. A lot of information. I hope everybody could appreciate this. We'll definitely have a recording of this where we could share with the community. And if there's any more questions, please send them in. We'll gladly answer them, and we'll set up another webinar where we could either continue talking about tips and tricks. We could talk about another setup we could do live if ever. There's many, and there's like scanning options as well. We could talk about that too, because I think it's a very good discussion. There's a lot of people who ask me very similar questions. I learn my tips and tricks from you guys, from my clients. People have tried a tip that I would give everybody is that, think outside the box, just, you have a set of rules, try to sometimes break them to get to your goals where you want to be. I mean, and I've said this a few times already, especially my clients, they kind of raise the eyebrow where like, if it breaks, Tanya, what do I tell you? I always say great, because this is how we learn, right? And a lot of people just, they give you this look, but then when they learn, they're very happy. And that's basically like, we're here to help, and we're here to support our community and making sure that, they understand what the software can and cannot do. And there you go. And your limit is basically as, what but at the same time is ask questions. If you don't ask questions, then, it's hard to learn, right? So.
As a fellow panelist, thanks, Esther. That was a great.
Thanks so much, Esther.
Thank you, Esther, so much. And thank you, Tanya. Thank you, Kristen. Thank you, John. And thank you, Cecilia, for organizing and getting this done. So if ever anybody has any questions, please feel free to send us an email. We'll gladly share with the panelists here and the panelists that couldn't show up today. And, honorable mention as well to Deborah. I mentioned at the beginning for Erica and Steph that normally joins us. But also for Deborah, hopefully next time she'll be here. All right, guys.
Thanks very much.
Okay, guys. Have a good one. Take care, guys. Cheers. Bye.